Hello, my name is Tim Gillou. Welcome to our channel. As the channel name suggests, this is we're going to try to copy the reporting style of Paul Harvey. Here we have information that's pertinent to the oil and gas industry, to the safety and environment industry, the collusion between government and industry. We have people calling us. At the same time, we have our portion of that, where we've injected ourselves over the last 17 years in the process of the safety builder development of services within the industry as they correlate with the industry itself. You're going to find out about the collusion and the Criminal Liabilities of Organizations Act that affects the industry, or affected the outcome of where we're at today. We're going to talk about the foreign ownership limits. Now, the foreign ownership limits have created we could say, a vacuum as far as the relationship between the industry and who we are today, who we try to, who we please first of all, whether it be the people, or the citizens, or whether it be interests that have no real relationship to our nation. We're going to talk about our going to the American government, or President Trump's government, and explaining that we have issues that when it regards to money laundering through the procurement, merger and acquisition of Canadian businesses, and where regards to American businesses, and where those assets are removed from America and transferred or sold through our Canadian exchange system. We're going to talk about over the length of this video, we're going to talk about issues where we have several extortions going on. One that's been going, that's almost historical now, where it has to do with the payment structure that is unique. A good article came out in 2015 that explained it a lot better than I can, so I will at some point make reference to that for you. The other one is the extortion we suffer over safety. Anybody in the industry today, whether they're a worker, they own a service business, or they manage it, is going to explain to you that the safety system as a design is administrative. So unfortunately, as we all know, pushing paper doesn't really save a lot of lives. But what it does do is it changes the liability aspect and removes liability, which is the main focus of it, is to take the liability off of the directors and executives of the oil and gas industry, and put it onto the worker and onto the supply chain and service businesses. We're going to talk about how this came about, and how they used intellectual property they didn't have the authority to use. That intellectual property is called the Field Service Management System. It was first developed by several imaginations. It started on September 15th, 2003. It was something that was known to the government that they didn't have the right to use it. It was known to government. It was known to the industry. It was known to the WCB boards. So this was something that they did in conjunction or collusion, that they stole something that they shouldn't have touched. And that's where we really come in, is because we authored that. We were the ones who built it and designed that. We shared it with the government on the idea was that we would run a real program that had full-time accountability, that was transparent. We had a industry that would benefit, and the benefits and the features were mutual, both on the corporate side of the oil and gas side companies, and on the side of the service and supply chain, that everybody benefited mutually, and that we had a safety program, environmental programs that were in the best interest of everybody, not just to have a paper tiger that we go around and tell the world that we got the best safety in the world and the best environmental programs, because you know what, we don't. Unfortunately, I don't like to hear that, but we don't. When we get through this, you're going to see at some point where we put on a process where we need to monetize it. I mean, at some point, we're going to have to generate money. We've put out a GoFundMe page. And as we go through this, and as you start to see the relevance and how this is going to affect you as a human being, not just as a person interested in the oil and gas industry or interested in the environment. At this point, by the time we get through this, you're going to understand there's no separation between you. You're people that, if you have an interest in Canada, whether it be you work in the oil and gas industry, or whether you you call yourself a staunch environmentalist. You're gonna determine one thing when we're done is that together we can move mountains. Separately, we can't. That's why they divide us. As we get through this, I mean, you're going to see in the GoFundMe page where I've written a little bit more extensively about what some cause and effects are going on. One of the cause and effects is, again, I mean, we've pushed this down the road for 17 years. I mean, this is a long time to be beating on this. I mean, a lot of us have had, those of us that are left, a lot of us aren't here anymore. But those of us that are left, when we started this program, we've suffered the normal influences of taking on an industry, and especially taking on government. I mean, I've myself and one of our partners have been known to do this and take on governments. So taking on the government isn't a new thing to us. I mean, we sued the Prime Minister's office. How many people do that just because they needed to be sued? Well, I mean, you sue them, it's not because of the effect. They didn't. Of course, they weren't going to show up. They didn't. So we'll discuss that at another time why we sued them. But I'll give you a little hint. It was because they had. They didn't care when it was explained to them they had a violation under 217.1 of the Criminal Liability of Organizations Act that include deaths and injury and environmental degradation, environmental destruction. That this current administration under Trudeau, he didn't care. He really didn't care. They didn't want to respond to it. So they had their little response. Their way of responding was try to attack me with the CRA. And I've been down that road before, so I didn't have to. That wasn't too big an issue. The next thing that we're going to deal with is we're going to deal with the industry itself is pretty big. I mean, we're a massive industry. It was so big, in fact, that when the Obama administration was leaving office and they asked them how in 8 years they all became multi-millionaires on government salary, they all said, well, we just invest in the Canadian oil and gas industry, which in a way might sound funny, but you have to remember all the money that leaves Canada, in the way of dividends. So all the profits that these companies are regulating are leaving in the way of dividends. If you have 85-90% ownership, as we are sitting at right now with our Canadian resources industry and a lot of our other industries, those profits, those dividends are leaving. They're untaxed. They just leave. Goodbye. See ya. We're not getting them back. So when they talk about, well, if we do this or that, they won't invest. That's a stupid argument. Except for our government allows that argument to go on because our governments they're complicit with it. So when they're complicit, they allow it because they're just worried about trying to get that next seat on a board somewhere. So if they can get that board seat, yeehaw, great. When they leave government, they can all get rich. Now we'll make examples of some people because it's just fun to make examples of people, especially they're wealthy, they put themselves out there as public figures. So let's make fun of them. So we'll give a little hint. Frank McKenna, I'm going to pick on him because we've picked on him for the last year and a bit. I know he's stopping now. We're going to pick on the chairman of Suncor, Dominic D'Alessandro. Now that one there, you guys are gonna kind of get a little chuckle out of that. But you're going to understand how the collusion isn't just in Canada. The collusion is it's especially in North America. It's at least North America wide, but it's kind of a worldwide phenomenon. The collusion amongst the elite today that are operating this stuff. I mean, if you think about after the 2008-2009 collapse of the housing bubble, of course the EU or the quantitative easing, the QE. The QE fed a lot of money into the banks. It didn't feed money into the people. So the banks paid down their debts. I mean, they invested in their favorite corporations. It doesn't matter where they were in the world. Those favorite corporations turned around. They paid off their debts. They bought back stocks, increased the dividends, and kicked the money back out the door. And that just became a rotating circle. So pretty soon you had very few owners. Your ownership pool has collapsed. You have just a few elite. And that's why when they tell you, well, so few people are getting rich, and while the rest of us are getting poorer, well, it's kind of an obvious conclusion. So I mean, that's one of the things where if you look at what's going on in the States right now, Donald Trump, when he got elected, he promised that he was going to clean the swamp. Of course, that's caused problems and issues, and there's a lot of swamp characters, I guess you could say, don't like it much. But one of the things he did do that we're going to talk about is he created the executive order of December 21st, 2017. And that is the confiscation of the assets of groups and individuals involved in human rights abuses and corruption. Now you might say, well, it's America. What's that got to do with Canada or anywhere else in the world? What it details is that that's to anybody remotely attached to the U.S. Now, our oil and gas industry is pretty remotely attached. As a matter of fact, it's not remote at all. It is attached. So anybody sitting inside that industry, if they're part of that system, they're going to end up having to pay the piper. And so we've explained that over and over on a few occasions. I mean, it's nice to kind of mention it to the oil and gas industry. If you want to be arrogant, we'll show you where we're going to head with this stuff. So we do communicate with the United States on, the same way we do with the industry or do with our government here, where we send them information. We don't wait for them to send us stuff back. We just continue to send them stuff. If they want to, if they want to use it, they use it. Of course, when we dealt with the money laundering issue through the mergers and acquisitions, that came back in March of this year. And we dealt with that back in last October, November. And by March of this year, the U.S. State Department had finished its investigation and came back as yes, Canada was the Western leader of money laundering, collusion amongst government, drug dealers, and international organized crime. That's a good moniker, a good handle. I mean, I guess if you're the current administration in Canada, I guess it's something you can be proud of. Now, we're going to get on to the reason for the GoFundMe page. So the GoFundMe page, when we get to that, you're going to find out the GoFundMe page is based on one particular thing, and that's the rights of the oil field services. Now, the services are forced to follow along on a collusion, and in that to use a specific formula. When that formula is beneficial to the WCB boards. The WCB boards, if we go back many years, they got sued. So if you got hurt, say in the 80s or the early 90s, they did whatever they wanted to. You were a victim of the system. Trust me, I know about it, right? I've been there. So it didn't matter how many times you got hurt or what type of injuries you got. What happened is the system came after you. I mean, it was the compensation board was on paper, the workers' compensation board. That's their name. Reality, it's not the same as what we put down on paper. So when the compensation board would come and try to, they browbeat you. So there was no recourse. If you wanted to sue, they said, okay, you had to go to the ombudsman. The ombudsman, again, like the compensation board, is an extension of the government. The ombudsman was never going to say yes. He'd never give you permission to sue. So you were left with no recourse, right? So that was the ultimate inclusion, I guess you could say. So we fast forward a few years. What happens? A young kid got killed. The dog's going off on somebody. The young kid got killed, on a work site in Lethbridge. His parents happened to be lawyers. His parents sued the WC boards. They said, no, you have to go to the ombudsman. They said, no, we'll just take it to the Supreme Court. They're both lawyers. They took it to the Supreme Court. Not only won the case, but they also won the appeal. Now, the reason being, if my memory serves me correct, they didn't actually take any money. They sent it to charity. They won quite a bit. They sent that to charity. They just wanted to level the playing field. So when they leveled the playing field, that put the WCB boards into a panic. I just happened to be on Facebook, all things, you mentioning some of the stuff that I was working on, and one of the people that are friended on Facebook, we got talking about the core program. He said, and he was one of the founders of the core program. We discussed what caused it, and how it came about. And he said, no, you're absolutely correct. And at some point, hopefully, we'll get him to ad lib a little bit more for us as we're going through these different sessions here. So along the way, what ended up happening is industry couldn't, or the government, the WCB board, they couldn't. They had a difficult time getting people to accept it. So they went to the industry and some of the corporations that said, okay, you can't work for us unless you use this stuff. That didn't hold up for very long. So people just basically get busy enough. People just tell them to go pound sand. So they come up with a new offering or a new suggestion. That suggestion was two problems. Well, the first problem was that the courseware, that when WCB was trying to do the courseware, it was brutal, super expensive, extremely brutal. I had guys I'd send out when I was working as a consultant. I'd send them out to business consultants, send them out to try to take these courses, and a lot of them failed. And it was it was brutal. Not a lot of guys would do them if they didn't have to. Small companies where it was just way over there, just the financial cost of you got with 1 or 2 trucks or 1 or 2 employees, it was just too much for you. It kind of went by the wayside. So at the same time, what was coming, the Bill C-45, the Criminal Liability of Organizations Act, Criminal Code 217.1 today, as we mentioned earlier. As that was coming out, at the same time, we started to build the field service management system. Now, the field service management system was an offshoot of a lot of technology that we understood and human conditioning that we had used from other businesses, which I'm not ashamed to say, but they come out of things like the timeshare business or the sales business on how you condition human beings. I bet you didn't know that people when they're selling you are conditioning you. But anyhow, so those things, we brought all those techniques and those things forward, and we tried to put that together with the technology. We just finished a business where we were at Callaway Golf Center. It looked like a golf business. It was a technology business where we had developed a lot of unique, additions to plug-and-play equipment we were using. So we wanted to advance off that and using geographical information systems. So we proposed this to the government, and that was the beginning of what became the field service management system. So as we moved it forward into time, the field service management system went back and forth. We'd send the government our newest revelations. We got into some of the tracking features we needed that didn't exist yet. Some of those were where we'll talk about that later. The change of the Transportation Safety Act that came into effect on January 1st this year in the United States, and then Canada extended 1 more year, so it's January 1st next year in Canada, where you have a requirement for electronic on-board recorders. Now, you guys with trucks, I know you want to kill me right now, so bear with me when I get into it. You might have a little better understanding. The idea was to make it a little more fair for you, so that if your truck's sitting there and a guy running down the road that was running 2 or 3 or 4 logbooks and sucking up all the work, where that would no longer exist. They did see the trucks available that hadn't worked, where they'd have to use them, and that's kind of the idea was a national program for that, and that's still on the books at some point. But right now we're looking at basically removing the liabilities that have been expressed and the extortion that have been expressed to the services and the workers. So what they did is they took the field service management system and they made it part of a training course. The training course was called the Safety Plan Developer Course. The Safety Plan Developer Course is a pre-course you have to take before you can develop your safety plan, which is the safety plan is primarily an offshoot of the occupational health and safety that already exists. So you have an occupational health and safety book for every jurisdiction. You go through it, and you pick the sections out that work for you, to throw them in your plan. That's that in a nutshell. If you go take this 2-day course, you pay for it, it's cheap. But now, instead of being run by a governmental institution, it's been offset. Now it's run by the industry safety councils. Now these sometimes they're for profit, sometimes they're not. They go back and forth depending on I don't know how much they had to drink at lunchtime. So in this particular case, they're sitting there and so now they bring it in. Now you take the safety builder course. Now you take this safety plan. Right, most people just hire somebody to do it. Right. Me included, it's just cheaper just to hire somebody. Here you go. So that gives you a little hint. Some guy builds a safety course, and I find it easier and quicker just to hire somebody. So they put together everything for me, bingo, bango, bongo. A couple days later, they download it to the WCB websites for jurisdictions I'm going to work in. In my case, it's Alberta and BC. So Alberta and BC comes back, says, okay, you're approved. Right, there you go. Change this, change that. Other than that, audit's good. There you go. Then we download it to what we call compliance networks. Now, compliance networks is where the first part, the core program, right, or the C core if you're a small employer. Core is certificate of recognition. C core is small employer certificate recognition. Is MECOR, medium employer. Every one of these things, right? What happens when you download that core program? That's voluntary. It has to be voluntary. But you can't work in the industry without it. And then as soon as you've downloaded that, and you get it back and out of the program, now you download it to a compliance system. There's 2 main ones, ComplyWorks and ISN. ComplyWorks and ISN, again, privately owned. So you send it off to them, right? ComplyWorks and ISN. Then, they put it in their network. I mean, you pay for the service. The service is there. You're paying. It's not doing you a real service, by the way. It's there to do the oil company's service. So the service is there, and say you're going to go to work for oil company ABC. So you go to work for oil company ABC, oil company ABC looks at your stuff, says, okay, we want this liability insurance, we want to be on that liability insurance, we want this master service agreement, we want this, we want you to change this on your plan, this on your plan, this on your plan, add this, take this away, take this away. Now, if you notice, this is after the audit. So now you're making all these changes. The next oil company comes in and says, change this, then So they're constantly, they get to delegate. But what they're looking at is they're looking at to ensure that the liabilities, that anything that happens in the field, those liabilities are expressed to you as the business owner, or the service business owner, and to your workers. Therefore, the liabilities are no longer, they no longer apply to the industry. The industry themselves have no liability. You pay for it, you pay for the service, that becomes mandatory. That doesn't mean you get the work, it doesn't mean you're getting any work. That means without this expense, right, you don't have the ability to be available for work. So that has an issue that we're going to deal with. That's the extortion, because now you've taken that voluntary system that's controlled by the government, and now you're running it through the industry so that it becomes a mandatory system. Therefore, everybody's a win-win except for the people who have to use it. So this becomes it's not that it's a hard thing. Don't get me wrong. It's not a hard thing. I mean, I actually fight with the system for a reason. I let mine go out of compliance so I could have my fly bug me. I let mine go out of compliance. The reason it went out of compliance, so I could see how the system worked, right? So I mean, I have the only real-time regulatory monitoring system for the pressure testing industry that exists today. So that's the ultimate in safety. Yet I can't work because I don't have a piece of paper. A piece of paper doesn't mean I don't know how to do my job. I'm decidedly the expert in the job. It doesn't mean I'm not capable of doing the job. My equipment's not able to do the job. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with safety. It has to do with administratively, right? I'm not safe. So if a piece of paper makes you safe or unsafe, I guess that's our new law. So as we're sitting here, that creates a problem. Now that problem is a problem that translates into NAFTA Chapter 11. So we get into how this works in NAFTA Chapter 11. Chapter 11 is where you limit the profitability, right, of an organization that wants to do business in Canada or is doing business in Canada from a different jurisdiction. So that could be an investment company, that could be all sorts of things. NAFTA Chapter 11 is going to get a little bit stinky, a little bit sticky here in a little bit. It's going to become it already is an issue. It's a massive issue. Canada's been sued 12 times. It's lost all of them. America's been sued 4 times, it's won. Mexico's been sued 4 times, it's won 3, lost 1. The one it did lose was a doozy, but they won the rest. Canada, unlike the rest, has a lot of pending litigation against NAFTA Chapter 11. If we were to look at what we can do now with the information we have in front of us, we know that through the extortion, when you extort people and you start to limit people's ability to work, what happens is you have a scalability issue. As soon as you have a scalability issue, now you have a profitability issue, because the cost of service starts to go up as soon as you want to scale up the work. The available services become busy, they become pressured. As they become pressured, they start to increase the price. Pretty soon the price increases exponentially, your profits start to dwindle. You've now triggered an issue with NAFTA Chapter 11 because the government's collusion in that safety requirement. So here you have an administrative cost. I like to call it the red tape. I like to call it the government itself actually creating the red tape. So what we've done with the U.S. is we've sent them the information on how it works, and we said, okay, so now President Trump, you've taken away all this red tape. How about as an industry or inside ourselves, we bring the red tape back for you? So when I explain it to them, the way it's run, to me, it's clearly a RICO violation. We'll see what the U.S. does over it. That's one aspect of it. Now we start looking at what's been going on since the late 80s. The payment structure, I mean, you don't get paid. It's actually been on about the mid 80s. It was part of the creation of the National Energy Program come through, and then the industries at that time was a lot smaller, as in the relationship between the businesses were smaller, the oil companies were smaller, the drilling companies, and all, everybody was just a little bit smaller, a little tighter operations. So what happened is we didn't have a lot of public companies compared to what we have today. So when everybody got chased out, a lot of American companies then too. So when the National Energy Program came in, everybody ran away, right? Or a lot of them ran away. Getty got into power after Peter Lougheed threatened to shut off the taps, right, and told him to freeze in the dark. He was my lawyer for a little bit back in the mid to late 80s. Getty got in. Getty came up with the Getty Plan. The Getty Plan is one of the reasons that the effect of the Getty Plan brought in the corporations. So it brought in a lot of public companies. It was a 25-75 plan. To loosely put it in loose terms, you put in $1, you got back $3, as long as you didn't find any oil or gas. So that's kind of how the Getty Plan worked. So that triggered because the people running the industry were primarily from Eastern Canada for our multinational companies. So when Klein got in, and Klein was famous for saying, well, kick out the Eastern bums. He wasn't talking about people on the street or the people working in the industry. He was talking about the people running the industry who were primarily from the East. If you fast forward today, we got the same situation now because of our the ownership structure as it's transcended since '08 through what would be the U.S. Obama years or the quantitative easing years. The ownership structure has changed to the point where you might have George Soros and a few of these other people that are doing some, that on their environmental side they run one thing, same as the Rockefellers, the same as Maurice Strong, but on the other side they're major contributors to the oil and gas industry. So they're playing both sides of the fence. Maurice Strong, of course, was before he died, he was caught up by his son in an incident that kind of any goodwill that the man did have left, he kind of destroyed. But that's here nor there at this point. Now we're going to look at when we start looking at how the influence of how these things all influence each other themselves, we realize that the extortion there and the extortion over the payment system. So when we started out, you said, well, can you help us out? Can you maybe take payment in 30 days instead of today or next week as soon as you invoice us? So we have rules in Canada that are kind of interesting. Again, when we get to this, when I give you this article, I mean we'll go over it back then. But the idea is now this 30, 60, 90, 120, pay you whenever, pay you never stuff starts to come up. Again, now the carrying costs are borne by the services and by the service industry. Therefore, you have to drive the price up, but you can't drive the price up when it's lower. So now we're at the point where we put a lot more people out of business again. You put them out of business. Again, you've affected scalability and you've affected profitability. So now you have another chapter, NAFTA Chapter 11 challenge. Then we can get to the ultimate chapter, NAFTA Chapter 11. This one might worry a few people, but the ultimate chapter, NAFTA Chapter 11, is really about the Trans Mountain Pipeline. So the Trans Mountain Pipeline, or the extension thereof, when Trudeau bought it, I mean, in the industry it's established, you paid about 10 times its value. Why would you pay 10 times the value? It could be because they didn't want to sell it. Who knows, right? But he paid a premium. That was a hell of a premium. But when he bought it, what did he cite when he bought it? He cited it was in the nation's interest. It was in the nation's best interest. Well, the laws are on the book when something's in the nation's best interest, say a railroad or a road or a pipeline, right? The government can bypass, the judiciary can bypass anything and create that. So as soon as he bought that and stating it was in the nation's best interest, he didn't have to worry about approvals from anybody. He just got to buy it. Here's the problem: he could have done that at any time with the pipeline. Instead of ending the pipeline, he could have gone ahead and just said it's in the nation's best interest, and everybody knows that. But by not doing it, what he did is he created the problem that happened or has happened since is now we have a profitability for the industry. What happened to the profits? You got to remember, 85-90% of our industry is not owned by Canadians; it's foreign owned. So now you've turned around and you've given them the ultimate, NAFTA Chapter 11 challenge. So here's the beauty of it. If you're looking at it as a Canadian, you say, hey, these guys, they kind of raped us already. They got all the money, the profit they made tax free too. Enough so that we even got Obama's people leaving office bragging about it. And now they get to come back under NAFTA Chapter 11, and they get to sue us. And they do. And this ain't going to be a small lawsuit if they do it. So what we've done And that's what you're going to find out on the GoFundMe page. We've said, well, there's two ways to stop them, right? One, we can take out the industry, right? So do we have a government in place? No, the current governments, right? They're happy. They're happy to go along with it, right? The way it is. We can go to the U.S. We can try to get Trump to exercise that executive order from December 21st, 2017, which we know he's going to. Therefore, a good portion of the shareholders, which will be the bankers or different people down there, the different well-heeled investors, at some point when he gets around to it, he's going to take it out. But do we really want our industry owned by the American government? That becomes another issue, right? And of course, the answer is no. So where we're at on the GoFundMe is that we can go after all the services and the service sector. We could try to sue the oil and gas industry. I mean, the GoFundMe page wouldn't need to raise $5 million. We'd probably need to raise about $500 million, because you're talking taking on the second most powerful group in the world. So that's a lot of money. Plus, you have your politicians that lately seem to be in their pocket. Now, again, we've shared all this information with the political power, so there's no recourse for them to say we don't know. So what's going to happen now is we're going to go to the service sectors, and we're going to demand them. Matter of fact, that we just sent a letter off to the premiers of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and BC, because they were involved in back from the earliest dates. To the WCB boards, likewise, they were involved back from the 2003 date. So we've sent them a letter explaining that we're going to put cease and desist against everybody that has a core program or operates a core program. In lieu of a cease or desist, you agree to join a class action suit, right, which will go after the governments for these various extortions, right, and including people in criminal organizations. If you don't agree, then we're going to charge you with what we've established in May 23rd, 2018, and again October 4th, 2018 with the industry. We're going to have to go after you for $35,000 a year for every year that you've used your safety program. Now, the benefit of it is by joining the class action suit, what happens is we give you cover, because you don't have a choice, and most of these companies can't afford it anymore. So the only way we're going to go after these guys, right, or we're going to be able to maintain our industry in our country and maintain control, right, is we make it so expensive that the use of their their trade agreements to harm the citizens has to come to an end. And if you wondered why Trudeau hasn't allowed the U.S. MCA agreement to take place, or why the Democrats in the U.S. that control the House have been doing the same thing, been holding it up, now you kind of have a little idea. When we tell you what Nancy Pelosi, by the way, her maiden name is D'Alessandro. Dominic D'Alessandro, no relation that we know of, except for it's interesting that he also is the head of Suncor. I'll leave that for you for now. Good thing talking to you. In the bottom will be a link to the GoFundMe page, so you can go, if anything, just go read it. All right, if you have time, just go read it. Just read it. You get a little bit more information, and then we'll try to break everything down into little sections for you and give you a little section at a time. It's probably going to take a little while to get through it. We're going to try to hold off on the media stuff until, probably what's coming up. The stuff we just sent off to the Premier's office, there's a little bit of media stuff in there that went back to when we filed the lawsuit against the PMO, and of course he didn't respond. So we'll get back to that, and other than that, have a good day, folks.